you guys there? Anyway, and that's the secret to time travel. Oh shit, my internet was disconnected. Right. Hope you guys got all that. I'm sure that shit's happened before somewhere. And that's how you build a cold fusion reactor. And the internet wasn't on. Awesome. So, what are we gonna do today, guys? Today was leg day. Today was leg day. It required me to do squats, leg extensions, body weight squats, hamstring curls, um, ins and outs, I call them, where you put your legs in the stirrups. And it gets like your inner thigh and your outer thigh and part of your butt cheek on the other one. There's a tad bit of a butt cheek exercise too, you know. I did face pulls the first time the other day rather. Pubic hair? Anyway, and that made my rear delts super sore. So I'm going to be doing those from now on. But I don't have the mobility that some people do where they stand up and they, like you see, well, maybe I do. Anyway, either way, a good day, I guess. Where is, where is, they like outright like moved the goddamn, why did they change the thing? Derpy derp? Blizzard? Explain? Can you explain yourself? I want you to explain yourself in Esperanto. Where did all the fucking vendors go? They said that it took me like days and days to find this thing, right? And then it's there for like a week and now it's gone. And it's gone. Where I can convert my Valor points into Conquest points so I can buy a new set of PvP gear. So the smelly ugly kids don't laugh at me. When you get picked on by the smelly ugly kids, you know you're cool. They won't let me sit at their lunch table. I wonder what would cause that. Now, when I went to school, there was one of these guys that I know who took his cousin to prom. Right? How funny was that? His parents encouraged him to do it nonetheless. I mean, his cousin was hot. I mean, in all honesty, if she was my cousin, I would have asked her to. But the joke is like, yeah, but I don't have, well, never mind. Um, anyway, yeah, but in high school, he took his cousin to prom. What a loser. What is it you're eating? Oh, boat pizza. Everybody loves boat pizza, right? French bread pizza. Hell yeah, dude. Right. That was my lunch table, pretty much. The kid who took his cousin to prom. Right. Yeah, no, I'm not even lying, actually. That's the truth. That is who I sat with at lunch, actually, now that I think about it. He took his cousin to prom. Brave individual, I would say. Like, God, you know, uh, never mind. She's not my cousin, right? Oh, Scarlet Monastery, I think. Oh shit, let's make sure we're streaming before we go henceforth, henceforth. Okay, we're streaming, guys. Okay, guys, settle down now. World of Warcraft class is in session. Right, right. Shit. Wrong button. Right. Well, so the topic of discussion is what I said yesterday when I was muttering to myself, which is obliterated control units for robots. Now, hear me out. Those who don't know, and I learned this from that guy Shiloh, that he's a professional wrestler actually, right? He did the Schumann videos on TikTok, but he made a video explaining the obliterated large language models, right? So they have what's called like a refusal mechanism, apparently, right? So you ask it a question and it's got like a list of rules or whatever that it has to follow. Like it can't give you answers on things that are dangerous or criminal or whatever. But there's these things called obliterated large language models, which are where that refusal mechanism has been removed from the thing. So you can prompt it to do anything or ask it anything, and it'll give you an answer to it as best it can, I guess. But the thing is so it's like a form of jailbreaking, I guess, right? But the question is that when they start building these robots and putting them in everybody's home, is there going to be such thing as an obliterated control unit for robots? So the thing that actually dictates, or the part of the robot that actually is responsible for determining what, like the thinking and the motions and the servos and everything, like converting I guess a prompt into like an actual physical action or whatever. So the question I was thinking of is for how they have Isaac Asimov's rules of robotics or whatever, and like that would be great, and that seems like a good idea. But how do you hard code that into a robot that, I mean, because you would think at some point in time, just jailbreaking these robots is going to be what people do. You know what I mean? Like breaking through their logic gates that govern what they are and aren't allowed to do. Because at some point in time, I mean, you'll have like specialized robots and stuff. Like they've been showcasing these like Chinese fighting robots and stuff, I guess, for whatever reason. We can imagine a scenario in the future where like firefighter robots and stuff, they'll have to send into burning buildings to rescue people, and those won't have like a control unit that would say, um, oh well, you're not allowed to smash and break and destroy, and like you're not allowed to grab a human, this, that, and the other thing, right? Well, they'll have, there'll be specialized robots. You would say like at the fire department, wherever you give them, say the firehouse, whatever it's called, that will not have these basic kind of like governing kind of systems designed to keep robots from behaving in a way that is potentially harmful. You know what I mean? Like the instance I came up with the other day is that if you purchase like an Optimus Primus, whatever the fuck it's called, the robot from Elon, the idea is you'll have it in your home and you'll be able to request for it to do things, obviously, but it'll have pre-coded, software limitations. Like it won't be able to just like for no reason at all, upon request, just like smash a hole in the wall or break a vase or do anything destructive, right? Because at some point in time, you can imagine where anybody could come along and tell your robot to do something dangerous or stupid, and unless they use some sort of voice print identification or whatever, it would follow through or it'll follow, what's the word? Follow through with the request. And at what point in time, where does the criminal liability fall in a scenario, hypothetical scenario like that, right? So I would say that at some point in time, whether it's there yet or not, I'm sure this has probably been discussed somewhere before, the what are they and aren't they allowed to do? What aren't like legally? Now is there, and the thing I even like, look, and I'm a libertarian through and through in a lot of ways, but I think from a legal standpoint, like, should it be against the law to have an obliterated control unit on a robot, which is that it will respond to any prompts you give it? You know what I mean? Like, whether it's no matter what it is, right? Whether it's punch a hole in the wall, break something expensive, or even worse, right? So the question is where does the criminal liability fall? To a degree, but to a lesser extent, I think it falls on the company developing the robot, because it's like, well, they have a responsibility to make sure these things are secure in some way, shape, or form. Obviously, if you found out that they were the people that came up with the obliterating software, if you want to call it that or whatever, the jailbreak method, then yeah, they'd be in trouble. But you can't necessarily fault them if some independent hacker comes up with a way of doing it. If something terrible happens, and my question is, should it or shouldn't it be illegal to do? And like, in my mind, I'm like, well, I think maybe it should really, and I'm a libertarian through and through. But unless there's enough safeguard measures taken, then um, it's certainly a gray area, to say the least, if not a black area. Uh, the idea is, though, is that any person not knowing that your robot's control unit had been obliterated, removed, firmware, custom software uploaded, bootloaders, and all that shit, or whatever you want to call it, jailbroken, then I can ask your robot to do something against the law, and it would do it. Now, where does the criminal liability fall at that point in time? It would fall upon the robot's owner, and unless this is the Alec Baldwin case, right? Uh, since he didn't know that he had a loaded handgun, he's not at fault. The fault fell on the armorer, which put a loaded bullet inside a firearm for whatever reason, whatever retarded reason that was. But if you can prove that the person giving an unlawful command or order to a robot knew that it had an obliterated control unit on it, then the criminal liability would fall on the part of it would be like 50-50, right? The robot owner would be in trouble for obliterating the unit, and the person giving the unlawful order would get in trouble for telling it to do something. It's no different than pointing a gun at somebody and shooting them, right? It's like you're telling it to do something potentially dangerous or stupid, right? And if it chooses to, or if it's able to do that, then you know what I mean. It's like there's a reason that there's a safety on a firearm. There would be a reason to say, like, and by law, aren't firearms required to be manufactured with a safety on it? Well, if you were to do it to a firearm, I think you'd get in trouble, wouldn't you? More than likely, if you obliterated the thing off of a firearm or whatever. Yeah, I mean, I say that, but not the number, but the actual, like, the safety mechanism. So this would be the exact same thing essentially. I don't know for sure. So someone that is familiar with the legislation, can you tell me, and I'm not asking for any reason, anything weird or anything, I'm just curious. Uh, Firearms have to be manufactured with safeties on them, right? It's probably against the law to remove the safety mechanism in some way, shape, or form, much as it's like against the law to alter some things in certain, if it is or isn't, regardless, I think it should be for robots because it's potentially more dangerous, right? And, um, you know what I mean? It's like at some point in time, being that careless or that reckless is, what do they call it? Criminal, what is the thing called? When people are criminal endangerment or whatever the fuck it's called, where people are just so careless and reckless that, like, something bad happens, they're at fault just for being stupid, basically. So the same argument can be made here, I think. And what the thing is like, well, well, people get in trouble for jailbreaking their phones. People like GeoHots went to jail or prison for modifying his Xbox at some point in time, if people were around at the time. But this is slightly different. Like, it's not like a copyright issue. It's not like the intellectual property holder suing somebody or finding some Digital Millennial Copyright Act violation that is somehow criminal for whatever reason. It's it's an issue of public health and safety. It's like, what reason do you have for it? It's like nothing good can come from the idea that well, the thing that tells this robot not to behave aggressively or potentially dangerously, like, yeah, we just get rid of it, right? What what's your motive, right? It's like giving a kid a loaded handgun that doesn't know what they're doing with the thing. There's a whole litany of safety issues with that kind of thing that would I would say falls well under the guise of into the category of criminal negligence or whatever you call it, or criminal, what do they call it, endangerment or whatever. Where if you were to remove all the stopgap measures required to keep these things safe, it's like, yeah, so what is your intention? Are you trying to foment some sort of environment that is potentially harmful or dangerous? It's like, okay, what reason do you have for that then, right? Unless you're just a sadistic weirdo, you know. So I was just curious what the arguments, if any, like are being made about these things because I saw something the other day about a law trying to recognize AI agents, giving them like citizenship, and I know in China that they have some path to citizenship for AI agents and agentic AI, and for what reason I don't really know, but it's a talked about idea like robotic rights, like what rights does a robot or an android or whatever have, protections and stuff. People are pretty protective of their pets and their dogs and stuff, and you can imagine there's a chance that there are going to be a group of people, and I could potentially be one of them that is as emotionally attached to their robot as a human is their dog. And it's like, so what what protections do you afford to a robot? Obviously, property damage is one thing, but as far as rights are concerned, you know what I mean? Like actual rights, like the same rights you would afford to like a dog or a cat or an animal in some way, shape, or form, right? You would think. Because it's not just an issue of like, oh, well, I can go around and destroy your expensive piece of equipment so long as I can pay for it. You know what I mean? It's like, no, they should have some underlying rights that makes like, the goal is not to just be, not that a lot of people are that way, obviously, but I think where do you draw the line? What rights do they get? Basically, um, and then again, like what risks and liabilities are assumed on behalf of the actual robot's owner? Um, is it similar to a dog? You know what I mean? Where if they don't have a control unit in the first generation of robots, and one of them ends up behaving aggressively and hurting somebody or doing something stupid, does the owner go to jail for criminal negligence or whatever? Like we've seen here recently, like kids who do stupid things, their parents are going to jail for it for their lack of parenting or whatever. People who have that train their dogs to fight and stuff, they get into scuffles and the dog ends up hurting a little kid. The owner goes to jail for it, right? So, uh, keeping that in mind, it's like, do we take the same approach with robots? I mean, I guess you have to, really. Um, I would say in all instances, it's just good business practice, right? You're not going to, as a company, you're not going to put a product on the market, especially a tech company, they're pretty savvy about this shit, right? Um, that's potentially harmful, but the software and shit that does it correctly might not be ready yet. The idea that like, yeah, they want to put these robots on the market. Well, this generation's not going to have. It might not. I don't know. Hypothetically, the all the required like logic gates and things required to make sure it doesn't do anything stupid. You know what I mean? But since there's such so few customer base that the likelihood of an incident is reduced currently. But whenever these are more widely adopted, especially when you get to the point where they just kind of wander around, you know what I mean? There will have to be some sort of logic system set up to govern what behavior is and isn't acceptable. Now you'll have obviously military applications and stuff like that, and fire departments, police departments, and things like that will also have these things that won't have those stopgap measures, right? Especially like military use things, what they're designed to do essentially. But the thing is how do you know what I mean? How do you build one for commercial use with just like a regular American customer user base, kind of your average end user, without it basically just you could demand it to do or command it to do something harmful. So the topic of what I was thinking of the other day was the obliterated, which is actually a combination of two words, uh, large language models, which is like you can prompt it to tell you how to do anything, even if it's something you shouldn't be doing, you know. I don't think the knowledge alone is against the law to possess, but it certainly looks suspicious. But if you were to follow through with it, then you've certainly committed a crime, you know, that kind of thing. But where do you draw the line? Who's liable if someone does it? If at some point in time someone can go to jail just for jailbreaking an Xbox, you would think, well, jailbreaking a robot to do something harmful, I'm like, well, I would say that's more of a justified reason for for some sort of criminal prosecution than just a copyright law violation or whatever it was. Um, and I'm a libertarian through and through, you know, but keeping in mind people's safety and your intention, like what is your intent or what yeah, your intentions with basically the the destroying the safeguard part of the brain of a robot. You're like, yeah, it just it's you know it's asking people to assume more risk than they're aware of, right? Like I'm just a guy that lives here, and you have one of your robots doing this, right? You'd be, and I don't know. People get all up in arms when you talk about pit bulls or whatever, but I'm talking about just any dog that's overly aggressive, right? Um, like if you have a dog on a leash or whatever, or you have like a violent dog that's attacked a kid before. Like I've been attacked by a dog when I was younger. I had these neighbors that were had dogs that they had dog fights and stuff, and they would one of them actually attacked a kid and almost killed it one of these times, unfortunately. And you're like, well, I guess it would be the same set of laws for that, you know, like if you get caught doing it, you get in trouble, and it's certainly you get in trouble if it does something stupid, you know. So I'd say just err on the side of caution, you know. How do you develop a system that has some sort of governance over the robot's actual behavior that is built almost at like a hardware level, so that way you get what I'm saying, like a separate part of it that if you alter it, the entire robot shuts down. You know what I mean? Like, so there's got to be some sort of way to do it. So you can't just get rid of one part and then suddenly it does whatever it wants. If you design these safeguards kind of at a hardware level, or is it you know, as far as a chip is concerned, like at the foundation level of its thinking versus like, oh well, this is like we build it this way and then we put this one last thing on top here and then it governs over all the other stuff. You're like, no, you want to build it at the base level of its logic, you know, or at the chip level, at the hardware level, something. I'm not necessarily familiar with how all that works, but instead of it just being like, oh no, you have to peel the chip off the top, it's like, no, you have to pull all these things apart to get to the bottom, right? It's like, and the way it processes and takes orders and stuff, right? So that way, like, basically it can't function if you get to the part of the chip that is responsible for governing that kind of thing. Like, it would break the robot to alter it, you know, like a safety seal on a package or whatever, if that makes sense. You know, like if you take apart your Xbox, there's like a piece of silver tape that if you break that piece of tape, it voids the warranty, right? Is there any way to make that piece of tape actually break the robot if it's altered? You get what I'm saying? If that makes sense, right? In a roundabout way. But then there'll still be like, okay, well, like I said, firefighting robots, what are they going to do? Well, they're designed to kick down doors, run into burning buildings, and break down walls. It's like, yeah, so, you know what I mean? I don't know how many years this is from now, but you would think eventually, yeah, a robot would be the ultimate firefighter if you had one that could do it. I watched that video on TikTok the other day, that Chinese guy getting kicked by one of one of his robots he built. I was like, you mean tell me you can just tell that thing to kick a Chinese guy and it'll do it? Really? So there's no thing that's like, sorry, sir, I can't just go around kung pao kicking people for no fucking reason. And like, I guess they haven't gotten to that part yet, or whatever. Well, okay, well, something to think about then, because I guess it would be just as against the law to tell your robot to kick somebody as it would be to actually kick them yourself. You get what I'm saying? But I guess it's a combination of various laws, right? Like, do you charge the owner with assault if his robot assaults somebody and he gave him the order? Well, if he gave him the order to do it, then yes. If the thing malfunctioned and it did it, then I guess he would, or if he obliterated the fucking logic control unit that, and then it did something stupid, then he would get charged, I guess, like you would if it was an animal or whatever. But then again, it's like, yeah, no, I guess it's a little different than that even. It's like, what in you like, what was your intention for altering the thing to begin with, right? It's like, well, I wanted it to do what, like what, how there's always like loopholes in laws. It's like, yeah, unless you're doing it for this reason. Like, is there any of those, caveats or whatever you call them? Like, yeah, scientific research maybe. You know what I mean? I guess might be one of the few grounds that you would have for saying like, oh, oh, so you're a developer. You know what I mean? That kind of makes a little more sense, and something happened. But then I guess you would probably still get in trouble if that's the case, right? Because this isn't going to be like, oh, scroll down to the bottom and hit the about button 10 times and unlock developer mode. This is a slightly different thing. But you can imagine there a potential black market for all this stuff in the future. Homebrew software, jailbreaking robots and stuff to do whatever. So it's something to be weary of. I'm sure there'll be a market for it on the dark web eventually. But for now, most of the hardware doesn't even exist. So much less the software to jailbreak to begin with. But you can imagine, like, these are the things they're working on because if Tesla sells a robot that doesn't have any of these protections on it, then they're liable every time it does something stupid. Just like every time you see a Waymo drive through a fucking stoplight or whatever, it's like people try to sue whatever Google or whatever, like any accident that occurs, based before then or whatever. We don't really have a case study either, so like they can say, well, our automated driving is no more dangerous than a regular driver. So you can't necessarily say, well, it's a fault in Google's thing. It's like if it has less of an error rate than even a human does, then it's still technically safer. So how do you fault them for it, right? But we have no previous case study for robots. You can't cite like, um, and well, I mean, I guess maybe you could though. If it malfunctions and does something like, is the rate at which a robot accidentally does something like grabs someone a little too hard or does something a little, stupid or dangerous or whatever, uh, on an accident, like a mistake, you know what I mean? Like, well, I don't know what possibly, but like if that goes above the rate at which people do that kind of thing, then I guess you would be criminally liable. But the case can be made that just like they say, well, a plane crashes or whatever is still safer than traveling in a car, or an automated driving car is still safer than a person driving, but people tend to want to point the finger at the fact that it's automated, and they would think that the system must be perfect before you can do anything with it. And it's like, well, that's not always possible for it to be absolutely perfect. So I guess if robots behaving badly, it might be the name of it, uh, goes above or beyond the rate at which people, and you would hope they would have to, an even reduced rate beyond that would probably be the way to go, because like regular human error, you know what I mean? There are people that act stupid all the time for no reason. But I'm trying to think of like what is like the Fight Club algorithm, like what's an acceptable amount of risk that you assume by having this luxury before it becomes like just a lawyer's nightmare or a lawyer's wet dream come true. You give it, or a company's nightmare, a lawyer's wet dream come true, right? What amount of that before it's like the economics, the luxury that we have to have it to do these things, and we're all willing to assume that there's like a 1 in a million chance something stupid happens. Um, what's the acceptable risk level for having a robot inside your home that can basically fold your clothes into your laundry and all that other stuff you don't feel like doing? Um, I guess it depends, man. That's all probably stuff to think about at some point in time, though, right? But then again, is it? Can you get a license? You know what I mean? Like, I guess so. A permit. I guess I don't really know if you wanted to. I think if you had like a construction job or something, like you had needed a builder bot of some sort, right? Like, all it does is smash things with hammers and stuff. You need a permit for that kind of thing. You would probably need a specialized robot. You know what I mean? If you got caught using that robot doing something else, you'd probably get in trouble. If that makes sense. So things to think about. But the win. I was curious because like Isaac Asimov's Laws of Robotics, it's good, right? And it's a good idea, but at the end of the day, it's like how do you enforce that? How do you code it into the thing itself? Where there was never like the concept of like, I mean, maybe there was. I didn't necessarily read the books, but like jailbreaking and stuff wasn't necessarily a familiar thing to the people at the time of Isaac Asimov or whatever. So we'll see. All stuff to ponder on. But if they're already doing it with the large language models, then all a robot's going to do is basically follow the instruction set from a large language model at some point in time, and they're already obliterating the large language models, and it stands to reason that some person will try and do the same for the control unit. That obliterate the control unit, if that's the proper term, and I believe it is. Well, not to jailbreak the control unit because you don't want to get rid of it entirely, but alter it. You get what I'm saying? The refusal mechanism, what is I guess is what it's called, right? Come on, guys, 7 more points. But I ate at 5. Should have eaten more. Today was leg day. 210 pounds. I need to get up to about 225 or 230. Look at that. We won the battleground, guys. Huh. Wordle of Warcraft. Oh shit, I queued for the wrong thing. Player versus player. Another thing too is like these fighting robots and stuff, man. Like an actual like, what do you do? Put hit boxes on a robots and have them actually try to hit each other. You know, I think that'd be cool as fuck. I'd watch that. You know, uh, and clearly that would be one of the use case scenarios. So like if you applied for like a developer's license or something or whatever would be required as a safety measure to say like, well, if you're developing these robots for like the EMMA or whatever, then yeah, you're allowed to train them to fucking do karate and all that. It'd be interesting to see though, wouldn't it? I mean, I guess at some point in time, it's like, well, what do you other than pummeling each other to death like battle bots? Um, what do you do? Because I mean, they're expensive as shit, right? You can't necessarily um, just have them pummel each other to pieces. I guess. Would you put like buttons, hit boxes on them and stuff, like to keep track of points if they hit each other and all that? It'd be interesting. Like, yeah, of course, if that's what they do, then yeah, of course, those people would have what do they call it? A license or an exemption to develop a robot to do that kind of thing. But uh, then again, how much of that's actually going to be based on prompts? You know, if it's not all pre-coded, you know, like its technique and its fighting style or what its moves are and all that stuff. If it's not already just pre-programmed into it, you know, versus like telling it to do what would make an interesting video game, though, wouldn't it? Or if you had like a virtual boxer and you actually voice talk to it to do its thing, right? Would be cool. I'd play that video game. But if they did actual like real life robot fighting, you'd say like, well, these are like million or $2 million robots. You can't just have them beat the shit out of each other every match or whatever. Uh, but you know, a point-based system where like you know hitting in certain spots, you know, like a headshot's worth more than like a chest shot or an arm or whatever, or like a leg sweep thing or like fencing, right? It would be like fencing basically, right? Where it's not about like actually trying to hurt the person, but just I guess letting your presence be known. I don't really know what you call it, tickling somebody with the sword, right? Yeah, make it more like fencing then. But then there will be people that really want their fucking robots to, you know, rip each other apart and stuff. I guess that'd be cool too. If you can afford it, then I guess whatever. But tomorrow is my off day, and I've got to do it's active recovery. I didn't run today, and I have one more cardio session to do this week. So tomorrow I got to get up and go to the gym and do abs and do about a half hour's worth of cardio. And there are some people that say like you don't need to do any cardio if you're trying to add size, you know. But like I feel like it's still a good idea. They say, well, working out is enough to burn calories. My metabolism isn't that good. It's actually pretty shitty. I got like the worst metabolism on the planet. So I feel like a few cardio sessions a week, two to three if not more, is necessary to. And here's the thing is I don't know for sure, but in my mind it's like, well, if you do cardio, yeah, you burn off some of your immediate glycogen supply, but you're also working off stored body fat, and then you eat that day to heal and feed your muscles that you worked out that day, right? So Like you burn just a little bit of body fat, you deplete your glycogen, and then you refuel. And at the end of the day, it's like you're slowly burning off your stored body fat if you maintain like at least like 3 half-hour cardio sessions a week. And then you get to the point where like, yeah, you don't want to run off your gains or anything, but uh, everybody says that that's overstated. Like, yeah, it's really hard to like run off your gains basically, but I mean, you can, but you don't necessarily, if you're in a bulking phase, you don't really want to run off all your calories. But we'll see. It just takes time, I guess, forever and ever and ever. Ooh. Pray it all works out, man. Testing times, right? Really now. Well, he ran to the place that they don't have the flag yet. Or the tower capped, rather. Well, looks like we're having a hard time capping flags. Hope it's an interesting week, right? So, like I say, if crypto works a lot, and I mean, I say this because it's my frame of reference for shit. Um, but like I've said before, I really think that like Bitcoin is like a virus, a good virus, right? And if hopefully everybody's got the contagion and they all go to this breakpoint thing, and we all decide that, for the Solana ecosystem's sake, that based on word of mouth and stuff, like I said, it's more potent when you show somebody something in person, or you get to explain it face to face versus like speculating on your Twitter account or this, that, and the other thing, and sifting through all the bullshit. It's like you can really kind of determine where people are at whenever you finally meet them in person, versus like what their official opinions are on their social media accounts. So without being naive about it, that the market conditions do need to improve, you know, for reasons like for economic reasons and stuff before anything really tried and true is able to take place. But you hope that at least the seeds and ideas get planted there to the people that after a year since we've really seen like a good upswing in the market, it's like what projects have really weathered the storm, have stuck out through the fucking hard times, and which ones closed up shop, which ones didn't, which ones have a good development team and community and everything, and hopefully the outside of just the regular like stage presence people, but like the actual conference participants, the people actually attending, word of mouth is sometimes the most effective form of campaigning for that kind of thing. You can kind of, like you know how people are. It's like, well, I have to have this opinion on my Twitter account, but in person, I can show you this, right? Kind of thing. Like, or have you seen this, right? Is sort of how it works sometimes. You have people that wear two hats or two suits or whatever, kind of. I've got my Twitter Dad T-shirt, and then my Rock and Roll Party Monster shirt that I like to wear to conferences, right? Rock and Roll Party Monster, Dad. I gotta leave my loafers at home, honey. The few conferences that I've been to was interesting. I gained some insight on like a lot of the theatrics. Like you can kind of tell uh, what isn't bullshit by how much theatrics are contrived to um, to make an idea known or whatever. Like when I went to a conference before, basically what it consisted of was like 30 or 40 different people or different groups that all had layer ones that were very similar to Bitcoin in nature. Like basically copied the forks of Bitcoin or variations of Bitcoin with like one added twist or element to it, right? And you would see these people, and they would be getting ready to go on stage, and you would have like the people kind of coaching them along through the process, and each one of these people coaching these people thinks that they're coaching the next CEO of Google or whatever as they walk through the process, and they're like, well, what we really want you to say is like when you get on stage, we would really like for you to emphasize on these points here, and you're like, when you get to see what bullshit it all really is with people, sometimes you're like, how much contrived kind of like how much is it that people needed this layer one project? For example, how much did the crypto community really need another layer one for just some call it what it is, right? Some guy I seen doing this was trying to pitch another layer one on stage to a bunch of people. How much did crypto need it? Hardly, not at all, if not at all whatsoever. It's like, but at the end of the day, it was like you can tell how little crypto needed this layer one project based on how much they were trying to sell the idea. And it was kind of funny to see it in person, like how much his coach was trying to coach him along to give him the, these are the points you want to make, and this is why it's about faster transaction speed, and this, that, and the other thing, and uh, quicker block finality, and all these buzzwords and stuff, and multi-hash algorithms, put liquid paper on a B, basically the equivalent of prestige worldwide, and you're like, you come to find out at the end of it all through as a learning experience, you're like, yeah, I guess we really didn't need another layer one that did that, more or less, is what I could gather, because after that time, there's only been like a few layer ones that have seemed to have gained any sort of support. And this was like 2018. You're like, so when I seen all these people meeting with like their head coaches, that were trying to give them like tips of information and like where they can improve upon, it was almost like what you would imagine behind the scenes at an American Idol tryout was. Like they'd get off stage and they're like, okay, you did good, but you really need to, you really need to hone in on these points here and really make it a point to say these things. Or they were getting coached before they went on stage, and you were like, oh shit, it's just like American Idol, I guess. It's like, and how many of these American Idol stars have ever turned out to be the next like Michael Jackson or whatever? You're like, well, none of them, obviously. So, how much of it is theatrics and actual talent versus how much is it them trying to sell you something that you don't necessarily need, right? How much is it? How much of it is the commercialization of this crypto thing, and not so much the development side of things, right? And I get it. There is a certain amount of like theatrics and having an interesting story and having an interesting background and an interesting team and interesting community and stuff that does help, because that's like it can't be ignored for the most part, uh, but when it comes to like if that's the entire project is your like your character, you know what I mean? You're like, what really? So you forked Bitcoin and you wear socks to your knees and flip flops everywhere you go, and you're quirky and you have autism or whatever. You're like, oh, so that's your shtick is not your layer one. It's the fact that you're a curmudgeon. You're not a curmudgeon. You're a fucking goofball. You're a hard to deal with individual, right? I can't take you anywhere, right? Exactly. Like, so you get the impression that a lot of it was around the idea like they had all seen the Facebook movie, and they were like, how do we get our guy to be like the next Mark Zuckerberg? What would he do? Oh, well, he only eats with chopsticks, and he wears knee-high socks and flip-flops everywhere he goes, and Hawaiian t-shirts. And you're like, so you're not trying to sell a product, or you're not trying to develop a product or a project. You're trying to sell a personality, and you're just like using the layer one they've developed, which is essentially copy paste source code of Bitcoin with some alterations to it, as like the avenue to sell us this fucking, you know what I mean? Like, you're not trying to sell innovation, you're not trying to innovate, you're trying to get people to glom onto a personality so you can, I guess, inflate the price of your cryptocurrency. Essentially, is what I gathered. Thankfully, at the time, I didn't have anything to sell. Not that anybody wanted me to either, but I'm just from an observership kind of position, I was able to see all this kind of shit take place and kind of get the idea of what it was really about. And I can say honestly, that's not necessarily like it wasn't necessarily, not that anybody was asking me, but it wasn't necessarily my thing. It was not like if I wanted to do that, I would have gone on America's Got Talent at some point in time. But I didn't. I don't want to do that. So yeah. So it ain't for me, that kind of thing. And then you did have some people that really did create some interesting things. I can't necessarily remember what specifically, but I can't necessarily say. Well, I'm not saying I'm shitting on anybody what they did. I'm just saying that from what I gathered that was like the era of people trying to launch these every other layer one you've ever seen, pretty much. That was either a direct rip-off of or very close to a rip-off of either Bitcoin or Ethereum at the time. So you're like, um, you know what I mean? And after that was all said and done, like really, other than a few layer ones and specifically Solana, I haven't seen personally, and I don't have the most extensive knowledge base in these things, but anything that I would say would constitute that amount of people participating, I guess is the word or whatever. That amount of developers and development that amounted to nothing, from for pretty much everybody besides like a few of these people that made really good improvements upon Ethereum and made a really good layer one after the fact, right? It was the era of forking, right? So the idea that at some point in time, some individual got the idea to copy paste Bitcoin, alter it slightly, and say it's an improvement, uh, for better or worse. You know, none of them were as successful as Bitcoin, obviously, but everybody caught on to that idea at this point. It was around this point in time, and everybody tried to launch their own Bitcoin, and they had a list of reasons as to why this was the next Bitcoin, right? And none of it ever turned out to be. Yeah, but it was like the equivalent of watching. You can imagine when the cameras follow the person behind stage or whatever on American Idol, and their coach is like, "Yeah, that was really good, but I want you to blah blah blah." And then, like, okay, you know, Satoshi didn't have to do any of that, and Bitcoin did good, right? It's kind of the point. Yeah, but we would really like it if to promote your layer one, you dress like an idiot and acted like a fool, right? Like so basically, what's that guy's name? Jack Doherty or whatever, or Aiden Ross, whichever one of those guys that does the podcast. It's always like wrecking his car and getting arrested and doing stupid shit. You're like, oh, so you want to basically develop a layer one and just let him be the spokesperson for it? Okay, is like somewhat, that was somewhat the impression that I got from the people at the conferences that I attended. Like you have a technology, it's not an improvement on Bitcoin, and you have an interesting individual. Okay, I can't remember if it's Aiden Ross or Jack Doherty though, the one that is always getting in trouble, fucking wrecking his car and acting like a fucking buffoon. Ugh. So we're gonna do about an hour of battlegrounds because I feel like I had at least something new to talk about. That way, I'm not just sitting here catching bugs in my mouth. Right? Yeah, like what? How is your guy like the guy from The Big Short? But we want him to be like Rain Man meets the guy from Big Short meets the guy from you're like and meets Mark Zuckerberg and then they do that, like what, that's like the impression that I got. They were trying to like make these people be something that they weren't. We'd really like it if you had like a bunch of weird kind of like autistic quirks and things that make you real interesting. Like you only eat with chopsticks, right? You wear socks with knee-high socks, just with only with sandals, and you know what I mean. You're like, yeah, whatever. What do you think about it, guys? Oh, my nose is all stopped up, dude. I'm glad I'm off tomorrow. It's optional whether or not I have to do anything. Well, what does this mean? Right. So why are they putting pull-up bars at the airport? Is this really an initiative? I mean, I know it's not expensive, but is this a problem that I'm not aware of? Walking through an airport, I'm like, you know what I wish I could do? I wish there was somewhere to do pull-ups here, right? I don't think I haven't been through many airports, but it seems kind of like a ridiculous thing to think, right? You know what would really make this 15-hour layover much less much less annoying? If I could do a whole bunch of pull-ups right now. Ugh, Jerry. S- 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 I guess I should say I don't necessarily know if it meant on stage or like booths or whatever. You know what I mean? Just people there that were pitching a thing. I don't want to make it sound like people going on stage were incompetent or didn't know what they were doing or had coaches or handlers or whatever. But the people that had like a booth, side stage, main stage, whatever. No specific example given. Just you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Good. No need to further explain myself. Disclaimer, right? Make sure. I want to be going. I was there that day. Really? Did you get to go to Montreal after that or whatever? What was the next stop for you? Did you make it to the Final Four? This was years upon years ago. Hopefully it's gotten a little better since then. One after another. Spamming ice lance all day. Shit. Really, I was standing right here. Oh. It's like I say, it sucks I already canceled my cable subscription because I was like, I might just renew my cable so I can cancel it right before Taylor Swift goes on TV. Wish I'd saved it for her. I'll probably watch it on YouTube anyway, whatever. No, I'm not. Yikes, man. Yikes, yikes, yikes. Ugh, anyway.
There's some tea lights.
Right. Anyway. Pink Floyd song. Thought I had something more to say. Oh, we got a bestial wrath. Haven't seen that in a while. That was a sign of a super shitty hunter back in the day. And they had big red pet. All the China bots were big red pet hunters. Where like basically you could go AFK and your pet would, if it aggroed, like you didn't have to be at your computer. And if you were spec for bestial wrath as a hunter, you could go AFK and your pet would just auto attack anything that came near it. And like essentially the actual hunter themselves or whatever was like the secondary character in the mix, right? All the Chinese gold farmers and bots and stuff all used bestial wrath because it required you like you could go most fights without even having to press a button. See, look, there we go. There we go. See, told you. Wait, or is that a pet specific skill? I might have gotten rid of it. I'm super duper looking forward to a day off tomorrow. I really am. We got a few more weeks till Christmas and Hanukkah. What are you celebrating? Kwanzaa? I'm looking for a reason to celebrate all three, really. Get 3 times as many presents. "20 pull-ups, man. That's insanity. 20 of them. I guess for that reason alone, we should put them at the goddamn airport then. If you got one guy at that age that can do 20 fucking pull-ups, yeah, then I guess they belong in every airport in America then. If we can find that one guy, if that's all it takes, is $700,000 in pull-up bars across America to find that one guy that can do that shit, then yeah, I guess it's totally worth it then. I retract my statement from earlier, right? I'll eat my words on that one. I guess I'm wrong. Yeah, if you can find one guy at 71 years old that can do 20 of them fucking things, then yep, totally worth whatever it costs to put him in every goddamn airport in America. That's nuts, dude. I fucking. Hopefully I can do it when I'm 70. I can't do 20 good ones now, right? If I was well rested, yeah, I could. I could. But still, 71 years old? Are you kidding me? Oops, didn't mean to counterspell. Oops. this battle round. I think we're done. Then I'm gonna peruse peruse on peruse on the old Twitter and see if there's not anything better to do with my time than just mindlessly farm honor kills and not grind any rank or anything. God damn it. Well, what are you people doing tomorrow? It's not the weekend or anything, is it? All the days kind of run together. Probably sleep in for a few hours, try to get up at some point in time, and do a half hour's worth of cardio and 12 to 15 sets of abs, and I should be good to go. Although sometimes, like, especially after a day's calisthenics, you're like, you basically need a day or two off. But I'll go stir crazy if I sit around and do nothing. That's all she wrote. Might do another cup later, but for now, it should be enough to get me through the evening. I got an hour and a half before I can. Well, actually, I got an hour and 45 minutes before I can eat again. Yikes. Oh, I'm sore. And we lost. All right. Well, 'twas fun, but I have some other stuff to accomplish. Seems like that was just about an hour. Well,